Hello, people. Welcome back to The Struggle, where we dive deep into the most effective ideas, stories, theories, and strategies for overcoming life's challenges. The struggle is the process of working through internal or external resistance in pursuit of growth, meaning, and freedom. And together we'll figure out how you're restricted and explore how you can struggle to break free, find meaning, and grow through whatever adversity you're facing. This is episode 59, and this episode centres around regret. A universally human experience that nags at our psyches incessantly for, it seems, no good reason. But is that true? Does regret serve a function? To answer that question, we have to look at this through an evolutionary lens because, like many aspects of the human experience, we've experienced it for tens of thousands of years. So, what makes regret adaptive? What function would regret serve our earliest ancestors? To answer that, we have to turn our perspective around from viewing regret as a hindrance towards asking what regret does for us. And to answer that, we need to look at another aspect of the human being that is adaptive, which is our tendency to focus mainly on the negative. What could go wrong? What has gone wrong? We almost never focus on the positive, and we certainly hardly ever focus on the mundane, the experience of life going boringly as planned or as expected. We focus more on the red traffic lights than the green ones, and we focus on the problems we face throughout the day rather than the boring bulk of the day going as expected or going well. This sounds counterintuitive or even maladaptive, but there's a very simple reason for our proclivity towards the negative or potential negatives of life, and that's that it kept us alive tens of thousands of years ago. Those of our hunter-gatherer ancestors who heard a rustle in the bushes and prepared to attack or run away survived, whereas those who ignored it or convinced themselves it was nothing would eventually be eaten by the source of the rustle. Maybe not that time, but eventually that rustle would be deadly. And so the takeaway here is that our proclivity to focus on what might go wrong and on the negative serves the function of preparing for the worst case scenario, even if it doesn't always feel like that, even if it doesn't always feel like it's a productive use of your mental architecture. The trick, however, is to not allow the worst case scenario, the rustle in the bushes, to freeze you. You will imagine all sorts of problems that may arise throughout your life, but it's those who analyze those problems for their likelihood, and it's those who prepare and plan for them that will ultimately do better than those who freeze or worse, ignore the problem altogether. Stoic philosopher Seneca said, "He robs present ills of their power who has perceived their coming beforehand." Ignoring a problem will only allow it to grow in size and significance. Think about your taxes or unpaid bills. Those who ignore them are allowing those issues to grow and grow the longer they ignore them. Whereas those who pay their bills and pay their taxes on time solve a much smaller problem than those who wait until those problems become insurmountable. But can we use that proclivity to our advantage today? Can we use our proclivity to focus on the negative and focus on the worst case scenarios to our advantage? We certainly can by analysing and intentionally focusing on the worst case scenarios to diminish their power over you. Again, this might sound counterintuitive, but usually when we actually verbalise or write down our worries and identify the worst case scenarios, they don't seem so bad. And even if they do, analysing what we could do about them is certainly more productive than ignoring or running away from them. And it's certainly more productive to deal with our issues in the present whilst they're still relatively manageable. The lesson here is to face any issue that rears its ugly head as early as possible whilst it's still manageable, because it's those who confront problems head on that will grow wiser and who will ultimately become stronger, and get more done. But what does our proclivity towards pain, fear, and the negative have to do with regret, the subject of this whole episode? Well, regret is a classic example of this proclivity. We are focusing on what went wrong, but what could be the adaptive reason for why we feel regret? What purpose could regret serve? Well, the obvious answer is that it allows us to learn a lesson to prevent the same problem from occurring again. Think about what mistakes you've made in the past, what you've regretted from your past. The likelihood is that you certainly wouldn't want to repeat it. And that's our psyche's attempting to teach us a lesson. If one of our ancestors came into contact with, say, a lion for the first time, they might have attempted to fight the animal, but they would quickly learn that that's not a wise move, especially without a weapon. And so if they lived to tell the tale, they'd regret that attempt and wouldn't try that again without any changes. It's the same with regrets today, except the majority of our regrets aren't life or death, they're saying the wrong thing or being late for work. But the similarity is that we ought to learn a lesson from every regret we have so we don't repeat our mistakes. It's our focus on what went wrong that allows growth, but growth only occurs if we learn from those mistakes. We spend so much time ruminating over our mistakes that we miss the lesson they're trying to teach us. Regrets are a natural aspect of our existence. It's how we react to them that differentiates the result of them. We can either ruminate over them and punish ourselves for them, or we can learn a lesson from them. You're going to make mistakes. You cannot control that. There will be mistakes in your future. What you can control, however, is your reaction to that mistake. And your reaction determines whether or not you will grow from it, whether or not you will learn a lesson from it. Rumination yields absolutely no productive or positive result. We all regret things we've done, we all make mistakes, and we all look back at our pasts and are upset with how we've acted in the past, or we even cringe. But as Mark Manson said, if you don't look back at your past self and cringe, then you're not growing. So, yes, have regrets. It's good to have regrets. Just make sure you're cringing over them, because if you're not, then you're not growing. We have to listen to the regret. Listen to what it's trying to tell us. Learn the lessons it's trying to tell us and move forward, less likely to make the same mistake again. Again, you're going to have regrets in life. You're going to make mistakes. That's not up for debate, but your reaction is where you have some control. Focus on what you have control over, not on what you don't. You can't change the past. You can't change the mistake you've made, but you can learn from it and move forward from it, learning a lesson from it. Or you can just ruminate over it, sit punishing yourself for it, which isn't going to yield anything. It's not going to yield anything positive. It's just punishing yourself. It's self-harm. It's mental self-harm. So I've got a practical strategy for actually deciphering what lesson our regret is trying to teach us. And it just involves answering these 3 questions by writing them down. 1. What regret or regrets have I been holding on to? 2. What lesson might those regrets contain? And 3. What would the wiser version of myself do differently next time? Then put your hand on your heart and speak to yourself like you were a loved one. What would you tell a loved one who told you this regret? They had made the same mistake you've made. What would you tell them? Tell yourself it's okay to make mistakes. You're growing and learning. You're not perfect, and that's okay. You don't have to be perfect. It's the best you can do, and it's the best you can do right now. You're trying to learn from it. That's a great thing. That's something to be praised for. You're still worthy of compassion and love. Making a mistake does not change that. Now, just writing down your regret and answering these questions and speaking to yourself more compassionately can greatly diminish the power that regret has over you. Stoic philosopher Epictetus said, "It is not events that disturb people, it is their judgments concerning them." Make sure your judgments about events, concerning events, are compassionate. Make sure your view of your mistakes are compassionate, because that's the only way to yield any productive result out of your mistake. It's the only way to learn a lesson, and it's the only way to alter your perception of that mistake into a more positive and compassionate light. Dr. Rangan Chatterjee has also said something that's very relevant here. He said this on his most recent appearance on the Modern Wisdom podcast, and it goes a little something like, we're all doing the best we can with the limited information we have, and so it's best to view everything we've done in the past as the best we've done with the limited information we have. No one's perfect. No one knows it all, so it's absolutely ridiculous to expect yourself and those around you to do the optimal thing all of the time. We're all just trying our best with what life's given us. And so a key takeaway here is to give yourself a break and give those around you a break. You're doing the best you can with the limited knowledge you have, and the majority of your past is made up of decisions you made with the limited knowledge you had. We should therefore view our regrets as a signal of growth, not failure. Regrets highlight our growth and knowledge, because we have more knowledge now. We have the knowledge to know that we regret what we did, which means we have grown. So how can that possibly be a failure? So the reframe here is to view regrets and past mistakes as signals of growth, because if you regret them or know they were mistakes, then you've learned a lesson and you can hopefully refrain from making the same mistake again. So to sum up, our tendency as humans is to focus on the negatives, on pain, fear, and what could go wrong. Now, this may seem like an unproductive aspect of the human experience, but it actually serves an evolutionary function, and that is to prepare us for the worst case scenario and to keep us alive. Because it was those of our ancestors who ignored the rustle in the bushes, who ignored the negative, or who ignored fear or what their body or their minds were trying to tell them, who would eventually perish. The second lesson was to face your problems as early as possible whilst they're still manageable, rather than letting them grow and grow until they're insurmountable. Next, we should give ourselves and those around us a break when considering our past mistakes and regrets, because we've all been doing the absolute best we could possibly do with the limited knowledge that we had. And so we and those around us are bound to make mistakes every now and then. So give yourself a break and give those around you a break. And lastly, we should reframe our regrets and past mistakes as indications that we've learned lessons and grown as a result. So there's 4 lessons on regret. I hope you found them useful. I hope you took something away from the episodes. And until next time, the answer lies in the struggle. So keep on struggling. Hi guys, I've just got a wee bit of housekeeping before you take off. Firstly, thank you so much for watching. It genuinely means a lot to see people watching and liking the content. Second, if you're enjoying the content, please subscribe to the channel. That's the absolute best way you can support the podcast. As you can probably tell, I don't have a team behind me helping with recording or editing the podcast, and I don't have a lot of fancy equipment, so any help or support is greatly appreciated because it will help the podcast grow and get better. And finally, keep on struggling.